it on me.
Hi, everybody.
Want to give me my glasses over on the far side of the desk there? Glasses, not. Anyway, I've been doing good enough for
Okay. David's here too, and David says, Brian says, new mill. And David says, yeah, inquisitive minds, God, no.
I actually see better without.
Brian Smith says, I'm going to be experimenting with eddy currents and non-ferrous metals soon.
Cool.
Huh? So, he's going to talk to you about the Big Bob.
Big Bob, yes. Basically, got a number of things going on right now. First of all, I filed a couple of permit sort of things. Notice of intent with the Forest Service and a small minor exclusion statement with Montana DEQ. And so need to get things lined up before I hit the field. In addition, the situation in Central America, we're currently waiting on good quality sampling to define what's happening in the mill. As you may recall, we had a mill with a jaw crusher, a hammer mill, a ball mill, then tables. And the tables had 4 different outputs.
Hi, Muckraker Prospecting. We have not found, have we ever found a meteorite? There was that suspected one.
We might have
That suspected one, yeah.
that one over there by Wickenburg.
Yeah. There was one we suspected.
And so they got this mill where everything is flowing and nobody knows what anything is doing. Okay? These samples here were nowhere near as concentrated as they should be with reference to this. If this was 20 tons, this was 160 pounds, which is about a 250-fold reduction in weight, which, if you were 100% efficient, which you never are, would be a 250-fold increase in concentration. Not even close. So therefore, we have to ascertain, first of all, what the hell is going on here? Okay? And there are indications that this could be too high. There might be losses in here. And we just don't know. So the guys down there are taking samples at these points here to determine what's actually happening. I say that's, you know, just to get a good idea of how the mill is performing takes 6 different simultaneous samples over time. And everything past this is all finely ground, so basically it just needs to be dried and split. This one here has to be pulverized and split. And then we can start doing some analysis. These right here will be easy to do a hand pan on. Or you might want to zoom in on the board a little one.
There you go.
say, all these over here, because they're already finely ground, we can do hand panning on and try and get a good idea. This one here, they've got a small ball mill on site, and they can pulverize that sample and pan it too. The idea is to pan these samples and send the pictures to me, and also split them down and get samples to be taken to assay lab so we can see what's going on. And we're just kind of in limbo at the moment when it comes to that system. Until we know what's happening, we have no idea what ought to be done in order to get good results. Go ahead. And
I muscle up. Highway slave. Yeah, when it comes to meteorites, there's one that we may have found. But other than that...
Yeah, we found it with a metal detector. Actually, I think the other guy was using a metal detector, or was I?
The other guy was using a metal detector.
And he found a rock, and it had all the characteristics of a meteorite.
Yeah, I wish we'd find meteorites. I wish we'd find fossils. I want fossils.
But anyhow, so that's basically what's happening in Central America right now. Those samples are critical in order to make any changes. In their spare time, they're also going to be taking samples of various geologic structures where they're mining on and such, and some dumps and things like that, so that we can get a good idea of what the ore grade we should anticipate is. We have one assay right now of ore grade. It's a single small sample that was basically just grabbed out of a stream at one point in time, which means it's not, statistically, you have very, very low confidence that it's representative. By taking a sample of the output of the hammer mill over hours, you have a much better idea of what the average grade is in the hopper. Now, the nice thing is, the stuff they already had filled in the hopper was modest grade. And for testing, you don't want to go, at least initial testing, you don't want high grade. You don't want super low grade. You want something that's kind of like an average grade. This is the kind of stuff that will make up the bulk of what you're processing. So at least they had, I think they said an estimated 5 tons in the fines hopper. And so that'll be just fine for these kind of tests. And let's say once we get those samples taken and the first hand pans, then we'll have a good idea what we ought to do in terms of initial tweaking.
Joshua, could the ball mill be holding the gold behind the armor plates? That's exactly what we think is going on at the moment.
I think there's probably quite a bit of gold in the ball mill. It's not just behind the liner plates and then the cracks in the liner plate, but just if it's a big chunk of gold, how does it get out of the ball mill? How does it rise to the outlet? It's difficult. Ball mills tend to be excellent gold traps. You know, as a pulverizer, it may be a great piece of extraction equipment. We don't know at this point. Okay? Also, they're using a sand screw, otherwise known as a spiral classifier, to classify the output of the mill, so that in itself can also be an excellent gold trap. Hard to tell. This is where you need to get samples. This is why we're sampling going into the mill and out of the ball mill. Those two samples are to try and define how much the mill itself, the ball mill, may be grabbing and keeping. Okay? Now, if it's keeping a lot of gold, it's not a disaster. It's a major annoyance because it's not going anywhere. You know, you will be able to get it later, but it's very, very hard to clean out a gold ball mill as opposed to, say, a sluice.
Diameter times the length of the ball mill, Douglas wants to know.
I do not know. Okay. It's a relatively small mill. It's running somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 to 2 tons per hour throughput. And that's classified and recirculating the oversize. So I honestly don't know, Douglas. It's more of a regular cylindrical mill, kind of like that, as opposed to like a semi-autogenous mill, which is more like this. You know, this is your axis of rotation. So, I say it's more of a conventional looking ball mill sort of thing, but it's indeterminate at this point. We have to see what's going on. In the meantime, I took a particular, if the table was going this and you got your gold line coming down here, and they were taking all of this as concentrates into the one, then they took a pan and tried to collect just the gold part of the concentrates line, and then the other part was what we call cons below gold line. Okay? Now, we did a bottle roll on this a week or so ago when the gentlemen were here, and I roasted the same sample, and we sent that sample off to Hiddle, the roasted sample off to Hiddle. I'm doing a bottle roll right now on the roasted cons, because we had a bottle roll on the cons. Now we'll have one on the roasted cons and see what the difference is, if any. So we're trying to get cross-referencing, you know, where we get different samples that should be fairly similar coming up with the same numbers, and if not, we know why they're not coming up. Right now, the tailings, they varied by a factor of 7. There were 2 different tailing samples, and they varied by a factor of 7. One was, you know, higher than you'd like, but not bad. The other one was pretty bad. Oh, I don't know about that, Shiny. But because this ball mill may be a major problem in the long run, the idea is in the future perhaps changing it to impact milling, and in that process they're going to need to have some good impact mills. And actually the most efficient impact mill when it comes to classification and everything else that I know of is my bob mill. Now, the one I've got is way too small. Thus, I am currently designing the Big Bob. Production expert. Yeah, this is a professional relationship. Okay? What I'm hoping to get out of this is if they need impact mills, then they will hopefully be willing to fund the research and
Shiny
development.
says, isn't that going to make an impact on the mine?
I really hope so. But anyhow, the idea is if they finance the design and testing on the Big Bob mill, then I will gain something. They will now have a device which will work very well for what they need. The Big Bob is also specifically designed to be able to be built by a skilled third world fabricator. You know, it doesn't require really fancy stuff, although It would probably be a lot simpler and easier if you could find a computer-controlled plasma cutter in a big city and have them slice up the parts first. One thing that I'm dreading is the fact that in order to make the Big Bob, I'm going to have to use metric stuff, like metric shafts and metric bearings and metric bolts. If it's all computer-controlled CAD, plasma cut, that's probably not that big a problem, because the computer can understand English or metric units in theory. But hopefully, does anyone here happen to know, does the standard metric size sheet of steel, is it the same size or a little bigger than a standard 4x8 sheet of steel? Because if it's a little bigger, computer controlled plasma, yeah, basically all of the stuff should stay the same. I'll bet you there are metric nuts and bolts close enough that the basic, hole patterns and stuff are not going to be a problem. In terms of flange bearings and stuff, perhaps. I mean, let's see, a 2-inch shaft would be what? Pretty close to 50 millimeter? Be a 50 millimeter.
2 inches
20,
is 5 centimeters, so 50 millimeters.
Yeah. Yeah. A little bit different, but pretty darn close.
Oh,
Yeah.
actually, it's 2.5 centimeters.
No, it's about 2.47 centimeters. It's like 24.7 millimeters.
According to my ruler, it's 30 centimeters to a foot.
I'm not disagreeing with that. What I'm saying is when you're talking thousandths of an inch, it's not quite the same. Okay? But I don't know how much I'll have the same basic design, but the dimensions will just be changed to millimeters. I don't think that will be a big problem. But if you were planning on using standard size metric stuff like, say, channel iron, instead of 6-inch channel iron, you're going to be slightly different. But I don't know exactly how much of what I'm going to have to modify. The original plan right now is also to build it all out of T1 plate, which is substantially harder than mild steel, but it's not near as hard as like AR500, but it's a lot better to weld. It's a lower alloy. Slightly smaller.
Brian says if someone's making a living off the tails, there's your goal.
Well, they're
There's
content.
a good question about that.
Yeah, I say that may be a big change right away. Absolutely. I mean, they may or may not, over the long run, even have any gravity separation, except maybe like what we do, which is to just scalp the bigger gold. I mean, we're getting like 400 mesh in the sluice. Brian, you might have a better idea, but if you're using Eco Gold X or presumably cyanide's about the same rate or whatever, if all that made it into the tank leach was like 400 mesh minus, how long do you think your leach cycle has to be, your retention time? You have any idea on that? I mean, a knowledgeable idea, not just wild guess. I mean, I can say this. It's a lot shorter than if you had 100 mesh gold still in there. And so it might be useful to have a very inexpensive, simple like sluice, low budget scalping mechanism to take the coarser gold out. So you can cut your leach time, and you can also just get some straight gold real quick. Many of these big mine plants simply leach it all. But I'm not convinced that in the majority of cases that is better than having a simple scalping circuit before the tank leach. I think you might be able to save substantial retention time in the tank leach while still getting, 90+% recovery, which would then increase your throughput dramatically for the same capital cost. I say these are some of the things the big boys don't necessarily think of, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't make sense for the big boys. Heap leaching is relatively new technology. Ryan,
Depends on temp agitation and grind size and pre-treatment and any boosters.
Well, I agree with that, but let's suppose you had only 100 mesh gold and only 400 mesh gold. Because it's 1/4 the size, your surface area to mass ratio is hugely increased in the 400 mesh. It's going to dissolve a lot faster. And that's why I'm saying I don't know how much the total residence time would be. But I don't have any problem at all understanding it's going to be substantially less to get the same recovery. Let's say, I don't know how much less. And even with the gravity recovered gold, there's no theoretical reason you couldn't put that in a separate agitation tank leach with just a much higher retention time. I personally wouldn't do it, but that doesn't mean it's out of the
realm of possibility.
Out of the realm of possibility. Very good. Yep.
I had a feeling you were aiming for that.
Yeah, being a small mine, and they're aiming for 20 tons a day or 1 ton an hour. If if that
might be impossible to tell till you do a few tests.
Yeah.
Jeff Bobby says 1200 by 2400. My memory is going 4x8 is 1220 by 2440. We're still going sizes of things.
Okay. So a little bit smaller, huh? There's no reason I can't. Let me get my calculator just a second here.
Hold on, folks. He's getting a calculator.
There's no reason I can't make everything just a little bit smaller to make it work. As a matter of fact, it's the sort of thing a CAD program can do. You just select everything and change the scale. 20. 1 2/3% smaller. Yeah, so you could just make it 98% scale and then redimension it. And then it might work. That might make life a lot easier.
Yeah, if there are nuts and bolts available that will fit that size.
There's a metric nut and bolt that's very close to an American one. A 1/2-inch American bolt is like a 13 millimeter.
Wade Slade says, "Where's your abacus?"
I don't have
He
one.
broke it.
I got toes.
You're totally off screen,
Oh. Anyhow, so I say it's the sort of thing where that might not be too hard. Then I could just.
Brian says your leach rate through the ore should be 1/2 to 3 inches an hour.
I'm talking about an agitation leech. Okay.
Yeah.
Not a pad leech or a what do you call it? Vat leech. Now, say again, depending upon a variety of factors, might just go straight to a vat leech. Just run it over a sluice, go straight to a vat leech or a pad leech. It's possible. You know, the other possibility might you go over a sluice, run it into a tank, agitate it for an hour or two, then dump it out on the pad. I don't know. We're just you know, that's why you have column tests and bottle roll tests and things like that. But the whole methodology of a micro scale mine is radically different than the big boys.
Brian says tank leech.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I say, so it's just one of those things that it'll take a lot of testing to refine it. Right now, the idea is to get this with that equipment working better than
Jeff
it is.
says, can you just cut everything from two of the sides? Then if it fits the smaller size raw sheet, then the bigger size works with a hair more waste.
Can you just cut
I
everything
suppose you could.
to the side? I think I see what you're saying. Okay, and I would agree with that. But I have to design it so that the whole thing, so all the pieces are just a little bit smaller in order to make that happen. Okay?
Besides, if you're going to sell plants to something, you want to sell them in the units that people are used to using.
Yeah. What I'm saying is that if I design it all in English units, rather than starting on a plain screen and redesigning everything, I can eliminate my, just not show my English dimension or imperial dimension layer and take everything else, shrink it by, let's say, 5%, okay, which is easy to do. I mean, you can literally just grab everything, change scale, 0.95, 0.95, X scale 0.95, Y scale 0.95, enter, done. And then you just have to redimension everything in millimeters. Now that wouldn't be nearly as hard. Okay? So, and in that case, again, a plasma cutter or some guy with a straight edge and torch could just do it to the new size. That would be an easy way to make that thing. To fabricate it in a different country, you're going to have to use metric, which is fine.
Brian says, put drain pipe on the bottom of a Connex and fill with ore and leach it till it stops giving you gold.
You could do that, although I would suggest maybe make a shallow V with sand and then put plastic in there and do it. What?
Jeff Bybee says, by the way, during World War II, American factories got up to where they got 1 pound of aircraft out for 3 pounds of stock aluminum before cutting. Wow, that's like not very efficient.
Yeah, that's the way things go. Say, I'm specifically designing these things so that it'll be relatively efficient, but I can see where designing it in imperial units and then just changing the scale and then redimensioning it might be perfectly adequate. Especially as there's two parts of the design. There's the part of the design where I kind of show where things are put together, and there's another, we'll call it the cutting template, where it shows all the individual components separately and how they need to be cut before they're assembled. And either one, again, if I put all my dimensions on a dimension layer, and then I just, make a copy over here, change the scale, and completely redo the dimension layer, it would work fine. And then we'd have the metric version and the imperial version. And I say, I'm not averse to the idea of letting these guys be the Central American or the Latin American distributors and suppliers of the stuff. I mean, I'm getting pretty old. Okay, I'm not completely geezerized, but I don't have the energy I used to, and trying to cover a whole hemisphere is a bit much for this old boy.
Brian says, tip the Connex and form a V in the bottom with spent ore, and then pump through resin and back to the Connex.
You could do it with spent ore, but it's not going to tend to channel to that.
White Slave says, use an old boat for a tank, El Cheapo.
You might. Might work.
Fiberglass boat, maybe.
I'm thinking of other things which may be even cheaper, which I'll keep to myself for the moment, but I think would be exceptionally useful in a third world environment. But I need to do some more research and development on it. But yeah, there's a lot of things that can be done differently. They're a little less efficient, but when you're a small guy, capital expenditure is maybe a whole lot more important than total cost. Roofing membrane.
Yeah,
possibly, or just pond liner. You know, we were pricing the other day. I think it was a 30 by 30 foot pond liner, 35 mil. I forget what it was. It's some plastic I haven't heard of, but it's like HDPE or better, but it's UV resistant stuff. 35 mil thick, 30 by 30, $1,000. You know, and that you could use to line your Connex. Absolutely. And then, yeah, for making the slopes, you could easily just put in sand or whatever. You could also add a little bit of cement to that when you're putting it in. If it was damp with cement and then tamped down, you'd have a pretty good solid surface to work with. And that should work pretty well. But yeah, there's a whole lot of different ways to play this game. And the big boys say not only do they have their systems, but and this is one of the things.
EDPM, Jeff says.
I think you're correct. And one of the problems with big organizations.
Wade Slave says that would make a great roof for a hobbit home. Yeah, I probably would.
But a big organization, everyone is very risk averse. Nobody wants to come out there and say, hey, why don't we change the way we do stuff? Even though once somebody does it, everyone jumps on the bandwagon. Heap leaching gold ores. Took off like a rocket. Wasn't basically anything there that was new except maybe for plastic sheet. Okay? Using acid leaching of oxide copper ores to get the copper out of it, and then using solvent extraction electrowinning to get it out of the solution. The solvent extraction is a little bit new, but the other stuff, not terribly new. You know, they've been doing it since ancient times. But, you know, you wind up with somebody's got to spend all the time and money to do the research. And that means you have to have a boss somewhere that's willing to go out a bit on a limb, risk failure, and where he won't have trouble with whatever bosses he might have. You know, it might be a particular mine mine general manager or something that comes up with ideas, and then upper management has to say, hey, go ahead and spend a few million on that. Okay? whenever you got a big organization, that can be a big problem. I found out that if you need to get something done at, call it ground level, a little mining joke there, you've got to have the engineer in charge and the mine operations guy in charge. And then he's got to have the general manager amenable to this. And then the general manager has to have the, corporate on board and this, that, and the other. Everyone's afraid
I know that.
everyone's afraid to throw money at stuff and then have it fail. And that's why big organizations don't get very far very fast in general. If you take a look at SpaceX, they're moving at, I don't know, at least an order of magnitude faster than NASA would. I mean, they get done in a year what NASA would take at least 10 years to do and maybe never get accomplished at all, because SpaceX is perfectly willing to blow stuff up to find out if it works. NASA isn't. They don't want to see the big flamey thingy in the sky. That bad PR. Now, I think Elon Musk has figured out, what gets people interested is the big flamey thingy in the sky. It's like NASCAR racing. Does anyone watch a NASCAR race hoping that there's no incidents whatsoever? It just runs for 3 hours with just guys going, going to get gas. No. The excitement is in the mechanical breakdowns, the accidents, the things like that. That's what makes it interesting. Otherwise, whoever's got the fastest car, yeah, they're going to win. What the hell? I don't have to watch it all.
I don't have to worry about that. Not enough money to get me back to looking for nuggets.
Yeah. But I mean, so with SpaceX, every time they launch a rocket, everyone's going, is this one going to work? Creates a lot of interest. And they're able to do it so cheaply that it doesn't kill them if it blows up. The whole system doesn't come to a stop for years while they figure out what went wrong. Think of the Challenger disaster. It was, 2.5 years before they launched another space shuttle? And they actually knew what the problem was before it blew up, which, in my opinion, people should have gone to jail. But the only people who were disciplined were the people who tried to stop the launch. See what I mean about bureaucracies? So I think there are opportunities to improve things at the small scale, and pretty dramatic opportunities. Okay? But we'll have to see. One of the problems in the United States, or called the developed world, is permitting costs are ridiculous. I mean, by ridiculous, okay, extraordinary. Let me put it that way. Extraordinary. You're going to spend millions of dollars to get a permit for a mine that's going to make a couple million at most? Well, why would you do that? On the other hand, if you can get the permit for $10,000 or $20,000, put it together for $200,000, or say $250,000 worth of highly mobile equipment, so you can move it to the next job after, a couple $1 million in a couple of years, okay, that's not a bad deal. But if you got to have ridiculous permit costs and times, there's no reason to. Third world countries are a different situation. Permit cost is how much does it cost to pay off that official. That
and
sort
keep
of thing.
him paid off.
Yeah. Where he doesn't steal the mine from you. A lot of times the best way to do it is to find the local bigwig and make him a partner. Give him a percentage. Unfortunately, it's probably going to have to be a big percentage. And you provide all the money, all the expertise, all the labor, and he's raking 50%. Yeah. So, I'll say there's negatives too. But, yeah, I'm really hoping that we can come up with some good stuff. No, actually, it was the two engineers from Morton Thiokol who were trying to stop it the day before. I mean, the night before. The quote I really like is when they were having a big conference call, and the head engineer from Thiokol was told by one of the NASA bigwigs, "Could you please stop screaming into the telephone?" Okay. So this guy's like, "You're going to kill him." And they basically said, "Can you guarantee it's going to blow up?" And he's like, "Well, there is a non-zero chance that it might get to orbit, but the odds are really, really bad." And they still pushed the big red button.
Of course they did.
And
Their government.
he was disciplined, as was his associate. So the two guys who tried to stop the launch, who said it was crazy, they were the ones that were reassigned. Yeah, I mean, it was blatantly. I had a subscription to a magazine called Countdown. Hello, Kenneth. And it was specifically starting up to cover the manned space program when things blew up. So they were very, very on top of all this. No, it didn't take any time at all to figure out what happened. Okay? It was pretty freaking obvious. What it took a little time to do is find out how much they knew before it happened. You know? Something like 80% of the launches had an anomaly in an O-ring at just the nozzle O-rings at the in the boosters.
We're off topic again.
Okay, so I say, I'm not a fan of big organizations and saying, we have to do it their way. No, I'll go out on my own, think of other ways to do stuff that may be cheaper and simpler. Say, the bob mill, for example. Why do I need an output conveyor if I can use the mill as a blower? I have seen truckloads of quicklime, which was basically almost a gravel, like half-inch minus gravel, so to speak, offload 25 tons of quicklime in less than an hour by blowing it 30 feet up to the top of a silo. It's like, this pneumatic transport thing seems to work. You know, if I've got a rotating mass inside a housing, depending upon where you make the openings, you can turn it into a blower pretty easy. It's not a whole lot of sag as far as I can tell. I don't think there's a lot of mid-air comminution going on. There may be. I have no clue. But yeah, why not get 2 or 3 things done with one device? I mean, the feeder that I made for, hand feeding was, darn thing vibrates. Okay, put a bucket there. At the right angle, it's going to feed out all by itself. It works. You can only put about 10 pounds in the bucket. Otherwise, the rate of flow changes too much over time to make it efficient. You got to basically just change buckets out. But when you're doing 200 pounds an hour, 200 divided by 8. 25 buckets an hour. So you're looking at changing an 8-pound bucket every 2 minutes.
Which I can easily do.
Yeah. Eva can handle it no problem. She's not a gorilla. And she can keep up with it with no big deal. What's the problem? Just think, how can I integrate stuff together? So once we figure out what's going there, then we can figure out what the alternatives are with that equipment, and then decide what we can do with other equipment. But I have a feeling the Big Bob is going to be highly useful. And, you know, in the long run, there may be a bigger Bob, too. Who knows? I would not be surprised. Take a look at the Stutenroth. They got the 2 ton an hour and the 4 or 5 ton an hour. I don't know what they call it. And the 8 ton an hour. In my opinion, those throughputs are hopelessly optimistic for most ores and any reasonable classification. Okay? That's my opinion. I think it's a well-built mill. It's strong as an ox. It's a heck of a strong mill. It's well designed for repair and maintenance purposes. But, you know, as I say, the throughput is not that much. And you have to add an external classification circuit, unless you got one of the older versions with the big classification wheel on it. And then, you know, if you got a nice hillside to work on, not a problem. It just runs, the slurry runs downhill from there into the next operation. But, yeah, it's pretty much a component, not a system. And I tried to make my design a pulverization system. It can feed itself, it can feed the next thing, and it can do its job efficiently with easily replaceable and refurbishable wear parts. It's specifically designed to put the wear at very particular points so that you can put hard facing on them and make them last a lot longer. Yeah, that was the concept. So, I've got a lot of design work to do there. Theoretically, Jeff Kablock's going to be here in mid-June, and we got some interesting stuff there. We got to get the mill unmothballed pretty quick here. We got a couple of tons of ore we can process there and get everything there up and running again. If we get the Big Bob going and Jeff Kablock has the ore, I mean, he said he was going to give us some of his ore from a dump, 10 tons, so we can do some testing. Hello, Shane. So theoretically, we'll have a fair amount to do.
Does anybody have any mining questions?
Yeah. Resin this year? Yeah, we're still planning on using resin to extract out a solution. Yeah, still going with the Eco Gold X and the Max Water resin.
Would be interesting to try resin pulp.
Why?
Just because.
We don't have a highly classified stuff right now. Remember all that stuff I'm screening out as it's coming off the end of the...
Yeah, sure.
Okay, resin beads are smaller than that. If you're going to do resin and pulp, you have to have a highly classified material. So that either resin or the carbon.
No, but I can't wait to get done planting because that's where I'm heading. Wednesday I should be done. Cool.
Okay.
The water kind or the selectives for platinum group metals. We're sticking with the max water.
Right now we got plenty of max water, and
Wasteland says show and tell.
I really don't have much to show and tell right now. We're waiting on results. We're waiting on laboratories to do their thing. This bottle roll that we're doing right now with the roasted below gold line cons. Hey Lito, how's it going?
Hi Lito.
This morning when we took it off, I put extra Eco Gold X in there because last time it kind of consumed it. But well, what's the weather like down there in Florida, Lito? The roasting apparently increased the consumption of the base, though, because our pH changed dramatically by the time we took it out, opened it up this morning, planning on sending a sample to the lab. It was down about a pH of 7. So I put some lime and some Eco Goldex in it, put another thing. I think I know what the KD3 is. The KD3 on cyanide solutions, we don't know yet. 80 degrees? 80 degrees. And humid. Lito says, "Home, Mom." I think he's trying to say hi, Lito.
Hello, hello.
But anyhow, so we don't have any results on the KD3 with cyanide at this point. Okay? So I do not know. They have plenty of KD3 to last them quite a while. And they were supposed to get a spot plate. I don't know if they had it before he headed off down to Central America. But we shall see. And so that's a good question too. Have you found a vein we can work? Nothing substantial here. No, not at this time. I got some lines on some possibilities. I say when Jeff Kablock gets here, he might have some interesting stuff for us to work on. But as of right now, not really. Still doing primarily exploration and just running the mill as much to just do bulk testing as anything else. We don't really have anything that's profitable to mill at this point. The grades are too low, but top of the hill ain't bad. But by the time you get the throughput and the wear and restrictions and stuff, it's not really terribly profitable. We want to get something significantly over a ½ ounce per ton would be nice. Theoretically, this stuff from Jeff will we'll do that. We'll see. Well, we'd have to discuss it in private, Brian. I'm busier than heck right now, John. Or was that Lito? Oh, Lito and John. Would you like to know as well? Yeah. I would say I haven't gotten to the point where I'm worried about making my own at this point. And say we shall see what we shall see. Oh, let's see. Is there anything else that we're doing? I can't really think of much right now. Hey, we got to get the mill and the lab out of the mill. There you go. That's going to take a day. Something made a mess in that mill.
It made a mess in my lab.
Yeah, well, in the lab. I don't know what it was, but I think Eva had possibly a good idea. It was either 2 pack rats fighting over territory or a cat chasing a pack rat.
Lito says I was making $100 in 45 minutes.
That's good.
Excellent.
Did you see the dry washer that I Break for Bedrock came up with? It's an industrial scale dry washer. It runs 2 to 4 yards per hour, if I'm not mistaken, and costs like $30,000 ready to go, including spare parts and spare tire and all that other stuff. Has a generator and extension cord, because you don't want any engine running in the kind of dust plume that a dry washer does. But I have a feeling that the EPA over there in California would have something unkind to say about that kind of a dust generation system. Oh, that's what I'm saying. It's regulations can be the determining factor. You know, it's not the hardware, it's not the knowledge base, it's regulations or some other thing. That's not bad. Not me, Kodak. I do think we figured out a pretty good system on the X-ray film, though. I think that system that I showed on that last video will work pretty well, and it should be quite profitable over the cost of materials, you know, the consumables. The question is, how much time does it take to shred the film? In terms of time it takes to process, I don't think that's too bad. Oh yeah. Yeah, Lito. So that's the nice thing about our situation. We don't need to be making a whole lot of money just to survive. That takes a lot of pressure off. By the way, is there any way to just check the email and see if the Central American folks
100 pounds of berries a year ain't bad. What are you looking for, dude?
Email?
Yeah, what do you want?
Is there anything from the Central American people?
I don't see anything.
I see Honey Bunny.
No, I see my chart.
My chart, that's what it is? Okay.
Nothing.
No.
Okay.
So we got no news, which is a little unusual. I haven't heard anything in a couple of days. I'm kind of guessing they're down there doing stuff.
Go with the new dry washer with all the spare parts we're joking around with.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, that's a nice looking machine they done built.
Yeah.
I'll be there at the end of the year with my grub steaks, says Guido.
Yeah. I mean,
woohoo!
They were feeding it with a mini excavator, and it didn't seem to be a problem at all.
That thing was just gulping it right up.
Yeah, they weren't just dumping fast, but I mean, they were dumping at a reasonable rate.
Oh, only 10 feet high? That's cool. Dang good.
So, that looks good. I haven't run one or whatever, but I have personally talked to and worked a little bit with Adam and Boulder Dash there, and they seem to be nice people and reasonably moral, etc. So I'd have a fairly good level of confidence in anything they made. They really seem to know their dry washing and their
their dry
metal
washing
detector.
was cool.
So that's an interesting device that might be highly useful for someone. Doesn't work up here because nothing's that dry. Usually there's a source of water not too far away one can use. But we shall see. It rained yesterday, last night, and I managed to see whether or not the flood control channel I had dug for the front driveway was reasonably effective, which it was. The puddle was no longer completely surrounding the van. The van was parked outside the puddle. The puddle was so small. So
Yeah, it worked really well.
Anyone got any particular questions or anything tonight? So I don't have a whole lot of news, so there's not a whole lot of subject matter. I will say, Eva worked very, very hard over the last 24 hours trying to get me a functional FreeCAD program. We finally had to just go back to her old computer, plug it in because the battery's not working.
And hope for the best, because my old computer is crippled and shutting itself down. Yeah. We need to get that program off it.
Yeah. But anyhow, So, I say it. She got me back on the program I was, and now I'm trying to remember certain things. You know, I used to be pretty adept at it, but now it's like, okay, where's that command? What do you do here? Blah blah.
Yeah. What else is new?
Yeah.
You'll be bloody hopeless. You will be hopeless.
Oh well. Such is life. Hart seems to be doing okay. He was kicking my ass at the store today walking. Yeah, it worked out pretty well muscle up. She had her walking stick, and I had a Matic for a walking stick. Check your email for pictures, says Lito. Take care, John. So
Bye, Kodak. I'll check the email.
it wasn't difficult. It was just slow. And then when we got to the bottom, Eva decided she wanted to continue walking kind of parallel to the road for a little bit to look at some stuff. And
Not seeing anything yet.
So she wasn't exhausted. But today we were walking around Walmart. This chick was moving.
I was trying to get myself up to full speed.
Ah, well, she was making it hard for me to keep up, which is a good thing. Now, I got the messed up knee and hip, which is, I think that's pretty much my limiting factor right now is the knee and the hip. Did you see the turtle on the skateboard? Not yet. Hadn't shown up yet, Lito.
No, I hadn't gotten anything in the email yet.
Oh. She'll check back in a minute. It takes time sometimes.
You know, we know it takes time. It always takes time.
Oh. Nah. I say that's about it. I've been busy doing, interesting stuff. The time's flying by. You said on YouTube.
No, I didn't,
Nope.
because we don't watch that kind of thing.
I haven't seen that. Well, I do sometimes, but I haven't seen it yet. Anyhow. Anything else, little one?
No, I can't think of a darn thing.
Okay. I also
Covered
want to
everything.
thank Chris Georgie for giving me a lot of help with the CAD program stuff.
Bloody nightmare is what it is.
Yeah, it's a pain in the ass.
About freaking time. Made a video of gold panning on Saturday. Used Home Depot sand. How much you get out of it?
Yeah, how did it work there, Brian?
Yeah, how much gold did you get out of Home Depot sand? We were inquiring minds want to know. Did you get enough to pay for the sand? That's the important part.
Lito asked the same question. Okay, Brian.
Well, the important part is, did you get to pay for the sand?
If you're sticking your neck out, you're gonna have to say something. Couple of microflakes, huh?
Unfortunately, the tinfoil hat goddess is on vacation. Well, actually, I'm not on vacation. I just haven't done anything tinfoil hat lately. So I will catch you up with my small doings.
Sir, if you want.
So, in the interest of fiscal conservancy and in the name of science, the goddess has gone back to working with reward programs. Okay? And I will say, it was nice to cash out $100 in Amazon gift certificates in only 2 weeks, which I did. So, I get to buy stuff on Amazon. Not that I like Amazon, mind you, I don't in the least. However, be that as it may, the reward programs still exist and they still work. And last I checked, but we will check again right now, silver and gold are still on sale, people. We're going to go see what they are worth at the moment, as a matter of fact.
How much?
You may or may not have noticed that the leftists are getting very, very insane. I strongly suggest you stay as far away from them as possible because they are mentally ill. Just saying. They really are. It's not a good thing. At the moment, gold is $3,344.70. Silver is $32.74 an ounce. Yes. Platinum is $964. Palladium is $930, and rhodium is still holding rock steady at $52.50, as opposed to $51.50. So everything is still doing its usual thing. To see the sheer audacity of the mainstream media at the moment, it's been rather fascinating. But it is also highly troubling, the number of people that genuinely believe the pure, unmitigated bullshit that is being fed to them.
Misinformation.
No, it went beyond misinformation and misinformation a long time ago. It's now unmitigated bullshit. If we could compost it and use it as fertilizer, we could feed the world. But anyway, that's the way that went. But in other fascinating news, X is in a state of tremendous upheaval at the moment. Now, when the goddess got monetized on X, the goddess made it very plain to everyone who would listen, which was absolutely nobody, because of course, I'm like Cassandra. Every time I tell people things, they don't believe me until it happens. And then they're like, well, wait a minute. And it's like, yeah, I told you. X started this monetization bullshit. And the goddess looked at it and said, this is just a Ponzi scheme with extra steps, people. Hello. Mark my words, we're going to start seeing every 2 weeks there's going to be this wave of suspensions because advertising revenue got hit when the leftists started a global campaign against X so that Elon couldn't make any money. Now, obviously, for the Ponzi scheme to work, money has to continue to come in so that you can pay it out to people. That's kind of the way this works. And sure enough, every 2 weeks, regular as clockwork, we started seeing waves of suspensions and waves of people being throttled just so that they'd come down to just below the point where they could get paid that pay period. And then 2 weeks later, well, by golly gee willikers, they somehow managed to get themselves suspended for the dreaded and unanswerable crime of platform manipulation. The problem is this is not defined in any way that is in any way useful. The definition is so vague as to be unenforceable in a court of law or by contract. It's null and void, but of course X uses it anyway. Basically, if you engage too fast, it's platform manipulation. If you use what they call follow trains, where you recommend people to your followers so that they can find people of like interest to follow and mutually follow back and forth, that's platform manipulation. If you copy and paste the meme of the day, that's platform manipulation. And then there's engagement farming. Apparently, making a good morning post every morning and a good night post every night is engagement farming. So are those infamous 3-word questions: coffee or tea, pizza or burgers, etc., etc., etc. So, we started complaining because people started, getting suspended right, left, and sideways, and I told everybody at the time, I'm like, mark my words, it's going to get worse. When the algorithm changes again, all of those mid-tier people, the people that are just above little accounts like me, so they're just now getting paid 30 or 40 bucks every 2 weeks, are going to disappear one fine day. And that's what happened a couple of weeks ago now. Out of the blue. Last pay period, last Thursday, tens of thousands of middle class, if you will, accounts, just a little bit bigger than the little guys and smaller than the big guys, all got suspended for platform manipulation. And you have to send in you have to fill out an appeal form with a detailed, professional, bullet point breakdown of your creative process and prove to the algorithm that you actually create original content. And funny enough, when you create original content, half the time it doesn't get seen at all. What gets seen is if you repost the big guy's meme, or you repost the big guy's thing, or you quote post some stupid news story for everybody to get outraged about. So now, tens of thousands of actual content creators have sent in their appeal forms, and as usual, they have disappeared into the void that is X-Customer Service, because X-Customer Service is run by a delusional AI chatbot that doesn't say anything useful to anybody. And it turns out that according to Elon, he turned the management of the algorithm over to his delusional pet AI code, Grok. So everything should work much better. Never mind that Grok is delusional and largely full of shit. I mean, like all AI. Yeah. Things are getting a little odd over on Excellent. And in case you missed the latest PSYOP, it's that story about the racist white lady. That is our latest PSYOP. Go figure the circumstances here. You have a child who is supposedly 5 years old and autistic, totally unsupervised out on a playground. And when you take a look at the video, this 5-year-old autistic kid is actually a little over 4 feet tall and has been traced back to a family that has 2 boys. One's 9, one's 11, neither one's autistic. This 5-year-old autistic child was looking in a diaper bag, wanting to experience the baby's toys. Well, actually, an 11 or 12-ish-year-old child was going through the diaper bag, again, unsupervised in a playground, and was called a little punk. And there happened to be a convenient bystander who saw this woman yelling at this punk, because he was a punk, who was going through her baby's diaper bag. And she called that kid a punk. Now the dude, bye Douglas, the dude happened to be a Somali, happened to be yelling about how she was committing hate speech, which is against the law, and by the way, it isn't in the United States. Happened to be undocumented, and happened to have had recent charges dropped against him for very, very nasty things with children. So what the hell was he doing, since he doesn't have a child, hanging around a playground? Now, according to him, though I did not hear it on the video very clearly, according to him, she called him a very, very bad word. And, well, according to people who could actually figure out what was going on in the video, she called Somali dude a very, very bad word and told him to go home to his own country, which I don't necessarily have a problem with. According to him, she was calling an innocent 5-year-old child who had done nothing wrong a very, very bad word. And now she is raised like $1 gajillion. And this is still a matter of great preoccupation. More and more people are wondering if this isn't a psyop of some kind. Because it's just a little bit too darn convenient. You know? It really is just a little bit too darn convenient. And it's even more convenient that a lot of the big names on all parts of the spectrum are completely ignoring the glaring inconsistencies in this nice little story. Because the narrative is just so perfect, why the heck would you pay attention to something as boring as the actual facts? we're not going to see the last of this. And we're not going to see the last of the deliberate rage baiting on all sides of this equation. And speaking of rage baiting, it might have escaped your attention. How many people signed that letter that were formerly intelligence agency doofuses? There?
About 51.
No, not the one about the Russiagate, the one about the revolution.
I don't know.
Well, anyway, here recently, a very large group of academics and former UN people and talking heads and various politician types wrote a very eloquent letter about how this is not the time to talk. This is the time for action because the world as we know it is disappearing. We must mobilize. Mobilize is a new word. Mobilize is an escalation. But we must mobilize. We must mobilize and we must get out and we must fight. We must not wait for the midterm. That letter, by the way, did not come from the right, but all the quotes in it, if you went out and did a man on the street and asked your average person on a college campus or your average person in a deep blue hellhole city, your average leftist, they would say that those quotes came straight from either Donald Trump or Hitler, probably Hitler, and that they were, in fact, a call for revolution. This is becoming some very serious rhetoric, people. The goddess is not joking when the goddess says, A, you need a full pantry. As a matter of fact, you should have a more full than normal pantry. B, you should have more cash on hand than usual. C, if you can relocate to a part of the world that has a higher sanity quotient than your average deep blue shithole, it would be a good idea to do so. And D, really be careful because the psychotic left is decompensating. These people are not safe to be around. And that's all there is to that. Now when it comes to gold and silver, the goddess has always said, and the goddess will continue to say, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. Bye-bye. Okay. And yeah, we don't have that many viewers right now.
Okay. How many do we have?
10.
10? Not normal. So, anyhow, that's the basic situation. We gotta finish the paperwork and everything on that claim we staked the other day. Gotta wait. Well, I gotta take the paperwork to the various agencies tomorrow.
Hi, Chris.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for all the help, Chris. I appreciate it. Anyhow, so I'll get the that paperwork filed tomorrow. The nice thing about living in Helena is it's pretty easy to just go to the office that takes it and just hand it in. You know, one nice thing too is you can theoretically get a receipt or make sure it's time stamped or something. You know, so. That's on the agenda for tomorrow. And keeping designing the Big Bob. And wait for laboratory results.
No, he didn't figure out FreeCAD. I got out my old Windows 7 computer that's on its last legs and doesn't even like to turn on anymore. I finally managed to get it to boot up and told him don't turn it off for any reason whatsoever. And at the moment, he's running the old QCAD on that until I can try to see if I can get, the QCAD program moved or copied or something with the license on it over to his laptop. I don't know if that's even possible, but I'm going to have to do something.
Yeah, I don't know. It's frustrating when all the hardware and software keeps expiring.
Yeah, it's like totally and completely sustainable. And on top of that, when I turned on his laptop today, I got the message of doom. It pointed out that Windows 10 is going to be end of life in October, so we need to upgrade to Windows 11, whether we want to or not.
What again?
Muscle Up wants to know, wouldn't it be better to wait till October? It's only about 6 months away and we'd have to file.
Yeah, well, a lot of people are staking claims right now.
Yeah, that's the problem. People are staking claims.
From a financial standpoint, you are absolutely correct. From a practical standpoint,
Especially since I
it's
don't
gonna
know
be
if we could do enough to cover for the small minor waiver. Because most of the things that we would be doing up there are not eligible for the small minor waiver.
I don't even want to do the small minor waivers anymore. They just kept screwing us over.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the government for you. I mean, they steal your money. What do
You
you
just pay the fee, and if they take the check, they can't say, "Well, you didn't do it."
Yeah, Muscle Up. I mean, with all the mayhem going on and the number of paper stakers and scammers and everything showing up and the number of people claiming anything that they can find, it's not a time to be waiting.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really don't want to upgrade this laptop to Windows 11, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to. My old one, I'm pretty sure the old one would not survive an upgrade to Windows 11 unless we put in a new battery.
Yeah. I say, I just don't know, but yeah, we wanted to get one claim. It's got reasonable numbers. It's easy to get to. It's close, and it's actually got a creek right there too that we could probably catch some fish in. Not big ones, I wouldn't think.
Well, I want to figure out where we can camp.
Did you see the people that were camping there?
Yeah.
Did you see the place where the outhouse was? That's campable.
Yeah, the Forest Service doesn't object to us driving on it.
I don't know. There's a driveway there. We wouldn't go 27,000 feet away from the road.
And we wouldn't use the outhouse either.
No. Wouldn't want to.
Well, the outhouse probably works.
Run some flavor of Linux.
Chris, I would not mind running some flavor of Linux at all, but my old laptop I'm going to retire anyway because it never has had the battery replaced. And yeah, I know. We haven't seen Minor Jim in forever.
Yeah, not sure what he's doing.
And Rock Butcher stops in now and then.
Yeah. He's pretty busy. I know what's going on with him.
Yeah, Rock Butcher's very busy.
But I'm not sure what's going on with Jim. I have no idea. I know they were working on a project last year, and I'm not sure what happened. I really don't know. But it looked like it had potential, but it looked like it was going to be kind of complex. And it was a hard rock project. So I just don't know what the dealio is. So, I don't know. I've been so busy. And,
Somebody just typed something, dude.
I am one of them.
Yeah, one of the gyms.
Oh, okay. Before gym night. Okay. John is fairly common too. But yeah, it's just one of those things, don't know. As far as I know, he's doing okay. But
Keeping track of anybody is getting hard these days.
we don't do a lot of socializing or whatever. So it wouldn't be surprising not to run into anybody. But that's just the way it is. Stay pretty busy. And got lots of stuff to do now. And I also have to go to the cardiac rehab and stuff, although it's doing fine. I'm presuming within a month or so, assuming everything continues, I'll be cranking it on those machines. And if I'm not showing any signs of distress, they'll probably release me.
Yeah, Rock Butcher Jim told me what he was up to.
Okay.
This Jim says, yeah.
Yeah, he's got a significant project there. I mean, like with us here, it's going to get busy right quick. And it would have been nice if the Central American thing had showed up in the middle of winter, that would have been a lot nicer. But oh well. So that's where we are. And hopefully we'll have some successes to report on this summer. It looks reasonable. You know,
Yeah, all kinds of interesting things to come.
but I say we got plenty of stuff to do, that's for sure. Any questions, anything like that at this point? I'm pretty much mumbling on with no real reason. I would agree with Eva, you know, it's pretty weird out there right now. And I have no idea what's going to go on, but I do know the guy from the Forest Service said that a lot of people are getting interested in staking claims right now. The day we were there, there was like 5 other people that talked to him that day.
Yeah, I believe he said so.
Yeah, something like that. So I say we were happy to go up where we were and, you know, not see anything. So we need to get that file down there at the county recorder's office this week.
Oh, absolutely.
Anything else? Anybody? Yeah, we'll try and get that done Wednesday. You know, Tuesday I got the rehab and everything. Oh. Hey, even Honey Bunny's not here tonight.
Yeah. Quiet night.
Yeah. Oh, well, I guess we're going to call it because there's just not a whole lot to talk about. And nobody's got any subjects or questions or whatever. So, if I don't see anything in a few minutes, go ahead and shut her down. I want to thank Chris again for all the help. And get back to designing. And we'll see what we can come up with by next week. Yeah, I don't see anything new, so we'll call it a week.
Chris says I'll poke his free cat a bit and see if I can figure out how to model the mill sanely.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Yep. So happy prospecting and keep it safe out there.
Bingo.